The gentle hum of the Morning Star's engines filled the bridge as the exploration vessel drifted through the swirling purple and blue gases of the nebula. Stars twinkled like distant diamonds through the cosmic clouds, creating an almost peaceful atmosphere aboard the ship. Captain Hoon Park stood at the main viewport, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he watched the beautiful cosmic dance before him. "Captain, we're picking up multiple signatures on long-range sensors," called out Lieutenant Kim from her station. Her fingers danced across the holographic display, bringing up detailed readings. Park turned, his expression calm but alert. "Classification: unknown, sir, but they're moving in formation. Definitely not natural phenomena." The bridge crew maintained their professional composure, but tension filled the air. The Morning Star was officially a peaceful exploration vessel, mapping the edges of human space. What few knew was that beneath its civilian exterior lay some of humanity's most advanced military technology. "Put it on the main screen," Park ordered. The massive display flickered to life, showing 7 ships approaching their position. They were beautiful in an alien way, crystalline structures that seemed to flow like liquid mercury, catching and reflecting the nebula's light in rainbow patterns. Their formation was precise, speaking of military training and confidence. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies," Kim reported. "Let's hear it." The message that filled the bridge made several crew members flinch. Admiral Ta Jin's voice dripped with contempt, the universal translator struggling to maintain the original tone while converting the alien language. "Primitive vessel, this is Admiral Ta Jin of the Kyra Dominion Fleet. Your presence in our space is a violation of Dominion law. Your vessel's design marks you as a lesser species. Surrender immediately and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in your destruction." Park's eyes narrowed slightly. He'd served in Earth's defense forces for 20 years before taking command of the Morning Star. He recognized the tone, the same one humanity had faced from dozens of alien species who thought themselves superior. "Send no response," he ordered quietly. "Battle stations, activate all defensive systems, but keep them masked until my mark." The bridge transformed as hidden panels slid away, revealing military-grade stations. Crew members who moments ago appeared to be simple scientists now moved with the practiced efficiency of trained combat personnel. The Kyra ships drew closer, their formation tightening. They were showing off, demonstrating their superior technology and training. Their sensors would be showing them exactly what they expected to see: a primitive exploration vessel with minimal defenses. "Sir, they're charging weapons," Kim reported calmly. Park allowed himself a small smile. "Let them fire first. Rules of engagement are clear. We defend ourselves only when attacked." The first shot from the Kyra fleet was meant to disable a relatively low-powered blast targeting their engines. It splashed harmlessly against the Morning Star's hidden shields. "Now," Park ordered. The transformation was instant and beautiful. The Morning Star's civilian facade melted away as advanced armor plates shifted and realigned. Weapon ports appeared where none had been visible before. The ship's energy signature changed from a gentle whisper to a roaring tsunami. Admiral Jin's voice came again, this time with noticeable confusion. "What is this deception? You dare. All batteries, open fire," Park commanded. "Target their weapons and engines. Let's show them how a primitive species fights." The Morning Star's response was devastating. Quantum-tipped missiles phased through the crystalline ship's shields as if they weren't there. Plasma beams, modified with technology that humanity had developed during centuries of warfare against itself, carved through their hulls with surgical precision. The Kyra fleet's superior formation became their weakness. They were too close together. Trained to fight as a unit against enemies they could overwhelm with numbers. They had never faced a ship that could match their technology, let alone exceed it. 3 Kyra ships erupted in silent explosions within the first 30 seconds. 2 more followed in the next minute, as they tried desperately to regroup and return fire. Their weapons, impressive against most opponents, barely stressed the Morning Star's adaptive shields. Admiral Jin's command ship attempted a desperate maneuver, trying to slip behind the human vessel. Park had seen the move coming. Admiral Jin's command ship attempted a desperate maneuver, trying to slip behind the human vessel. Park had seen the move coming. Bring us about. Full rotate on axis. All starboard batteries. Target their bridge. The Morning Star spun with impossible grace for a ship its size, its weapons tracking perfectly. The barrage caught Jin's ship directly in its command center. The crystalline structure cracked. Atmosphere venting into space. Sir, their flagship is disabled but intact. One enemy vessel is attempting to retreat. Park nodded slowly. Let them go. They need to carry the message back. As the surviving Kyra ship limped away, its once beautiful crystal structure now scared and fractured, Park turned to his crew. Send a message to Earth Command. First contact with the Kyra Dominion has been made. They proved hostile. Recommend immediate deployment of defense fleets to this sector. He watched the retreating ship until it vanished into warp. Humanity had encountered many species who thought themselves superior, who saw humans as primitive or weak. They all learned the same lesson. Humanity's greatest strength was being underestimated. Resume our patrol route, Park ordered, and let's hope the Dominion is wise enough to learn from this encounter. He knew they wouldn't be. They never were. But humanity would be ready when they returned. The Morning Star's civilian disguise reasserted itself as the ship continued its journey through the nebula. To any observer, it once again appeared to be nothing more than a peaceful exploration vessel. But now, somewhere out there, a damaged Kyra ship was racing home with a warning about the terrible mistake they had made in judging humanity by appearances alone. Admiral Tajin stood before the Kyra War Council, his uniform still bearing scorch marks from the battle. The Grand Chamber's crystalline walls reflected the light of 3 suns, casting rainbow patterns across the worried faces of the gathered officials. His hand shook as he replayed the sensor data from his encounter with the human vessel. You must understand, Jin pleaded, his voice hoarse. This wasn't just superior technology. The way they fought, it was like they knew our every move before we made it. High Admiral Sun Wu lounged in his command chair, absently tapping his fingers against its crystalline surface. His face showed nothing but boredom and mild annoyance. The other council members shifted uncomfortably, looking between Jin's desperate expression and Wu's dismissive one. One lucky encounter does not make them a threat, Wu declared, waving his hand as if swatting away an insect. You lost 6 ships to a single vessel and fled. Perhaps the problem lies not with these humans, but with your competence, Admiral Jin. Jin's face flushed with anger and shame. My lords, I served the Dominion for 30 cycles. I've never seen weapons like theirs. Their shields absorbed our strongest attacks like they were nothing. We must prepare. Enough. Wu's voice echoed through the chamber. I will not have the Dominion cowering before some primitive species because one admiral couldn't handle a simple first contact situation. He turned to the council members. I am authorizing a disciplinary fleet. 30 ships should be more than enough to handle this incident. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the massive shipyards orbiting Earth hummed with activity. The UES Thunderchill floated in its dock, its dark hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it. At over 2 kilometers long, it was the largest warship humanity had ever built. Captain Ji-Won Lee stood in the observation lounge, watching as the final preparations were made. Her reflection in the window showed a woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a face that had seen its share of battles. Beautiful, isn't she? Admiral Chen asked, joining Lee at the window. More than beautiful, Lee replied. She's the answer to every alien race that thought humanity would be an easy conquest. The Thunderchild's weapon systems were unlike anything seen before. Quantum phase cannons that could bypass any known shielding. Adaptive armor that learned from each hit it took. An AI combat system that could process and respond to threats faster than any organic crew. The Kyra Dominion is preparing a response fleet, Chen said, handing Lee a datapad. 30 ships. They still think we're primitive. Lee smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. They always do. Every race we've encountered has made the same mistake. They see our ships, our technology, and think we're centuries behind them. They never consider why we might look primitive, Chen added. They never ask themselves why a species might choose to hide its true capabilities. Lee smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. They always do. Every race we've encountered has made the same mistake. They see our ships, our technology, and think we're centuries behind them. They never consider why we might look primitive, Chen added. They never ask themselves why a species might choose to hide its true capabilities. The dock's massive arms began to retract as final launch preparations commenced. Lee watched as her crew boarded through various airlocks, each one handpicked, each one the best at their specialty. The Thunderchild is more than a warship, Lee said softly. She's a message, a reminder that humanity learned its lessons about war long ago, fighting ourselves. We don't build weapons to show off. We build them to end fights before they begin. The ship's engines began to power up, a deep thrumming that Lee could feel in her bones. Warning klaxons sounded throughout the dock as the massive vessel prepared for departure. Your orders are simple, Chen said. Find the Kyra fleet. Show them exactly why provoking humanity was a mistake, but try to leave enough of them intact to carry the message home. Lee nodded and turned to leave. Chen caught her arm. And Ji-1, make it memorable. The Kyra Dominion needs to understand that humanity isn't just another conquest for their empire. The bridge of the Thunderchild was unlike anything in the Kyra fleet, where they favored beautiful crystal displays and elegant design. Humanity built for efficiency. Dark metal surfaces housed holographic displays. Every station was positioned for maximum effectiveness rather than aesthetic appeal. Lee took her command chair, feeling the ship come alive around her. The AI system, ARIA, greeted her with a soft chime. All systems operational, Captain, ARIA reported. The crew is at battle stations. We are ready for departure. Lee looked around at her crew, seeing the determination in their eyes. They all knew what was at stake. Humanity had fought too hard, sacrificed too much, to let another alien empire think they could be bullied or conquered. Let's show them why you don't provoke humanity, Lee said, her voice carrying across the bridge. Take us out. Set course for the Proxima Ridge. Maximum warp. The Thunderchild's engines flared to life, pushing the massive vessel forward. As they cleared Earth's defense perimeter, Lee thought about the Kyra fleet preparing to teach humanity a lesson. They had no idea what was coming for them. The ship slipped into warp speed, the stars stretching into streaks of light. Somewhere out there, 30 Kyra ships were about to learn the same lesson that every other would-be conqueror had learned. Humanity's greatest defense wasn't its weapons or technology, but the fact that potential enemies always underestimated them. Lee settled back in her chair as the Thunderchild raced toward its destiny. The storm was gathering, and she intended to be its center. The shimmering crystal ships of the Kyra fleet emerged from warp in perfect formation, their hulls catching starlight like frozen rainbows. 30 vessels, each a masterpiece of alien engineering, arranged in a battle pattern that had won wars across 3 sectors of space. Commander Yun has stood on his flagship's bridge, watching as his sensors detected a single ship waiting at Proxima Ridge. Magnification, he ordered, his lip curling in contempt as the image appeared on the main display. The human vessel hung against the backdrop of stars, a dark, angular shape that seemed to swallow light rather than reflect it. It made no attempt to flee or call for reinforcements. They send 1 ship against 30. He laughed, and his bridge crew joined in. Their arrogance will be their undoing. Battle formations. Let's make this quick. Aboard the Thunderchild, Captain Ji-1, Lee watched the Kyra fleet approach. Her crew worked in focused silence, each person knowing their role in what was about to unfold. ARIA, the ship's AI, displayed combat projections across multiple screens. "They're moving into attack formation Delta," Araya reported. "Standard Kara doctrine for overwhelming a single target." Lee nodded. "Let them come." Weapons status: Quantum Cascade Arrays charge. Adaptive armor at full capacity. All systems green. The Kyra commander's voice filled the bridge, translated in real time. "Primitive vessel, this is your final warning. Surrender now or be destroyed." Lee smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Araya, send our response." The Thunderchild's reply was not in words. Its first shot, a quantum cascade beam, struck the Lid Kyra vessel before they even registered the weapon firing. The crystalline ship shields, considered impenetrable by most races, might as well have been missed. The beam cut through the vessel from bow to stern, leaving it drifting in two perfect halves. "Impossible." His voice echoed across space. "All ships, attack pattern Omega. Destroy that vessel." The Kyra fleet's response was beautiful but futile. Energy weapons and projectiles streaked across space in a deadly-like show. Every shot struck the Thunderchild's hull, and every shot was absorbed, analyzed, and rendered harmless by its adaptive armor. "They're firing everything they have," Lee's tactical officer reported, almost sounding bored. "Shield strength actually increasing from energy absorption." Lee leaned forward in her chair. "Show them what we can do. All batteries, free to engage. Araya, activate combat protocols." What followed would be studied in war colleges across the galaxy for centuries to come. The Thunderchild moved like no ship its size should be able to move. Araya's quantum processors analyzed Kyra battle patterns in microseconds, predicting their maneuvers before they made them. 3 more Kyra ships fell in the first minute, their beautiful crystal hulls shattering into space. His voice became increasingly frantic as he ordered change after change in tactics. Nothing worked. The Thunderchild seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, its weapons striking with surgical precision. "Reform the line." I screamed as another ship exploded. "Concentrate all fire on their engines." "Sir," his second-in-command whispered, "their engines aren't where our sensors show them. Nothing about that ship is where it should be." The battle, if it could be called that, continued for 2 hours. The Thunderchild methodically took apart the Kyra fleet, demonstrating weapons and defenses that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Ships that tried to flee were disabled with precise shots to their engines. Those that fought were systematically destroyed. Ha watched in horror as his mighty fleet was reduced to floating debris. Everything he knew about warfare, every tactic and strategy that had served the Dominion for centuries, proved useless against this single human vessel. "Sir," his weapons officer called out, voice shaking, "they're targeting our bridge." I looked at the sensor readings one last time, finally understanding what they had awakened. His last transmission was sent not to his fleet, but to the Kyra High Command. A single word that carried with it the weight of a civilization's miscalculation. Impossible. The quantum cascade beam struck true. His flagship split apart like its brethren, adding its crystalline fragments to the debris field that had once been the pride of the Kyra fleet. Captain Lee stood from her chair, surveying the aftermath. Of 30 Kyra ships, 28 were now destroyed or disabled. The remaining 2, deliberately spared, were already fleeing at maximum speed to carry word of what had happened. "Send word to Earth Command," Lee ordered. "The Kyra fleet has been neutralized. Minimal damage sustained. 0 casualties." She paused, looking at the glittering field of destruction around them. "Add a personal note. They know now. They finally understand what they're dealing with." The Thunderchild hung in space like a dark sentinel, its mission complete. The Battle of Proxima Ridge would become legend, but its true importance lay not in the ships destroyed or the lives lost. It was the day the galaxy learned that humanity's apparent primitiveness had been a choice, and not one their enemies should have forced them to unmake. Military analyst Min Su's hands trembled as she played the battle footage for the 12th time. The massive display screen in the Kyra High Command's analysis chamber showed the destruction of their fleet in crisp, horrifying detail. The dark human vessel moved like a predator among prey, its weapons cutting through their best defenses as if they weren't there. "Play it again," she ordered, her voice hoarse from hours of study. "Focus on Section 23, when it engaged the 3rd Squadron." The holographic display zoomed in, showing the moment when 3 Kyra ships tried to flank the Thunderchild. The human vessel's response defied everything they knew about space combat. It seemed to predict their attack pattern, moving to counter it before they even began their maneuver. "Impossible," whispered one of the junior analysts. "No ship that size can move like that. No crew can react that fast." Min Su smiled grimly. "That's because we're assuming there's a crew making those decisions." She pointed to the timing displays. "Look at the reaction speeds. They're using artificial intelligence for combat control. Advanced AI, far beyond anything we've developed." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Kyra Dominion had always considered itself superior in all forms of technology. Now they watched as their assumptions crumbled. Frame by frame, reports flooded in from across Kyra space. The human vessel, dubbed the Ghost Ship by terrified crews, seemed to appear wherever they tested Earth's boundaries. 3 more fleets had encountered it. None had survived intact. In the Grand Strategy Chamber, High Command gathered to hear Min Su's findings. The crystalline walls, once a source of pride showing their technological advancement, now seemed fragile compared to the dark hull of the human ship they watched on screens. "They've had centuries of isolation," Min Su explained, highlighting various sections of her analysis. "While we expanded our empire, believing ourselves unchallenged, they prepared. Every component of that ship shows signs of being tested and refined through actual combat." "But against who?" demanded one of the admirals. "They were alone in their sector." "Against themselves." Min Su's words cut through the chamber like a blade. Human history is a chronicle of constant warfare. They didn't need aliens to learn how to fight. They taught themselves, generation after generation. She played a new piece of footage, showing the Thunderchild's adaptive armor in action. "Watch here. Their armor doesn't just block attacks, it learns from them. Each hit makes it stronger. They've turned defense itself into a weapon." The High Command watched in silence as their best weapons bounced harmlessly off the human vessel. Each failed attack made the ship more resistant to their weapons. "It gets worse," Min Su continued. "We're detecting quantum signatures we can't explain. Their weapons operate on principles we've never even theorized. While we made our ships beautiful, they made theirs lethal." Another report came in as she spoke. Another Kyra fleet encountered, another defeat. The Thunderchild seemed to be everywhere at once, appearing from nowhere to shatter their formations and vanish again into the void. "The ship's name," Min Su said softly, "comes from their literature. A story about a vessel that fought against overwhelming odds to protect its world. They named it that deliberately, sending us a message we were too arrogant to read. Fear spread through the Dominion like a virus. Merchant ships refused to travel alone. Military vessels clustered together in defensive formations. Every shadow in space became the dreaded human vessel waiting to strike. Their isolation wasn't a weakness," Min Su concluded to the High Command. "It was a forge. While we grew complacent with our superiority, they prepared for war on a scale we never imagined. Every technology on that ship was built with one purpose: to survive anything an enemy could throw at it and hit back harder." As if to emphasize her point, another alert sounded. The Thunderchild had appeared in the Kora sector, destroying a patrol fleet that strayed too close to Earth's claimed space. By the time reinforcements arrived, they found only debris and a lingering message: "Stay away." "We didn't find a primitive species," Min Su told the silent chamber. "We found humanity's first warning system. That ship isn't just a vessel. It's a message about what happens when you force humans to show their true capabilities." The Kyra Dominion, mighty empire of 1,000 stars, found itself afraid of shadows. Their mighty fleets clustered close to home. their expansion plans forgotten. They had awakened something they couldn't control, couldn't understand, and couldn't defeat. And somewhere out there in the void, the Thunderchild waited, a dark guardian ensuring that humanity's message was clearly understood. Leave us alone, or learn why we spent centuries preparing for war. The massive fleet assembled in orbit around Kyra Prime looked like a forest of crystal spires catching starlight. 200 ships, the largest battle group ever assembled by the Dominion, moved in perfect formation. Supreme Commander Jinwu stood aboard his flagship, the Crystal Throne, watching his armada prepare for what he promised would be humanity's last stand. "This ends today," he declared to his assembled commanders through the fleet-wide channel. 200 ships against their one. "We will crush this human resistance and remind the galaxy why the Dominion has ruled for 1,000 years. His words brought cheers from the crew, but they rang hollow against the fear that had taken root in their hearts. Everyone had heard the stories of the ghost ship, the human vessel that couldn't be destroyed. The fleet emerged from warp at the designated coordinates, sensors immediately scanning for their target. The Thunderchild was there, as intelligence had predicted, hanging in space like a dark slash against the stars. "Just one ship," Jinwu laughed. "Their arrogance will be there, sir." His sensor officer's voice cracked with panic. 3 more signals. They're coming out of quantum space. Jinwu's laughter died as 3 more ships appeared alongside the Thunderchild. Each was as dark and threatening as their infamous sibling. The Dreadnought, larger and more heavily armed. The Valiant, sleek and deadly. And the Indomitable, bristling with weapon systems no one had ever seen before. 4 ships against 200. Jinwu tried to sound confident. "The odds are still." The human vessels moved before he could finish. They didn't break formation or try to scatter. Instead, they began what could only be described as a dance. The 4 ships moved in perfect synchronization, their paths creating complex patterns in space. All ships, attack pattern Delta. Surround and destroy. Jinwu ordered. The Kyra fleet responded with practiced precision, their crystal ships moving to encircle the human vessels. Energy weapons fired from 200 ships at once, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. What happened next defied explanation. The 4 human ships continued their dance, but now space itself seemed to twist around them. Their quantum weapons didn't just fire, they altered reality itself. Where crystal ships had been, empty space remained. Entire squadrons vanished into suddenly appearing quantum rifts, emerging seconds later as scattered debris. Impossible. Jinwu slammed his fist on his command console. How are they coordinating like this? The answer became terrifyingly clear as the battle progressed. The human ships weren't coordinating. They were moving as one entity. Their AIs had linked, creating a single combat consciousness that could process and respond to threats faster than organic minds could comprehend. Squadron 7. Flank them. Squadron 12. Prepare tow. Jinwu's orders were cut short as both squadrons disappeared, their atoms scattered by weapons that shouldn't exist. The Symphony of Thunder, as the battle would later be known, lasted less than an hour. The human ships moved through complex patterns, each movement precisely calculated. Where their paths crossed, space itself became a weapon. Quantum cascades rippled through reality, tearing Kira ships apart at the atomic level. Jinwu watched helplessly as his mighty fleet crumbled. Ships that had survived 100 battles were swatted aside like insects. Weapons that could shatter planets bounced harmlessly off the humans' adaptive armor. "Fall back," he finally ordered, his voice shaking. "All ships, emergency retreat." But retreat proved as impossible as victory. The human vessels had herded them exactly where they wanted, creating a killing field from which there was no escape. The Thunderchild and its sisters continued their deadly dance, each movement bringing more destruction. "Sir," his second-in-command whispered, "they're not just defeating us. They're showing us how obsolete we are." Jinwu could only nod as he watched another squadron disappear into a quantum rift. Everything the Dominion knew about warfare, every tactic and strategy they'd developed over centuries, meant nothing against these 4 ships. When it was over, the human vessels hung in space, surrounded by the glittering debris of what had been the Dominion's greatest fleet. Of 200 ships, barely 30 had survived, most too damaged to do more than limp away. The human ships made no attempt to pursue the survivors. They didn't need to. Their message had been delivered with devastating clarity. Humanity had been holding back. Jin Wu stood in his ruined bridge, watching the 4 dark ships disappear into quantum space. His mighty fleet was gone, and with it, the Dominion's illusion of supremacy. They hadn't just lost a battle. They had witnessed the future of warfare, and it had left them behind. "Send word to High Command," he ordered quietly. Tell them we never had a chance. Tell them everything we know about warfare is obsolete. Tell them the humans weren't showing us their strength all this time. They were giving us a chance to walk away." The surviving ships limped home, carrying with them the terrifying knowledge that they had finally met a force they couldn't hope to match. The Dominion had ruled space for 1,000 years, but that era had ended in a single hour, destroyed by 4 ships performing a deadly dance among the stars. Dr. Sung Ki stood before the massive archive screen, surrounded by thousands of years of human history. The Kyra Cultural Research Center had been working nonstop since the devastating defeat of their fleet, trying to understand the species that had so thoroughly humbled them. "Play historical sequence 17 again," she commanded. The screen flickered to life, showing ancient human battles. Primitive warriors clashed with swords and spears, their tactics already complex even in humanity's infancy. The footage advanced through time. Knights in armor, armies with gunpowder weapons, massive metal vehicles called tanks, aircraft engaging in deadly aerial ballists. "Look at the progression," Key pointed out to her fellow researchers. "Each advance in technology came from warfare, but that's not the interesting part. Look at how quickly they adapted each new weapon, how fast they developed countermeasures." The images continued advancing. World wars that engulfed entire continents. Cold wars where the threat of extinction drove innovation. Space warfare simulations that proved eerily accurate when compared to their recent encounters. "Their entire history is a preparation for conflict," she explained, her voice trembling slightly. "But not in the way we first thought. They don't love war. They fear it." Every advancement was driven by the desire to end conflicts faster, to protect their people more effectively. Key pulled up another display, this one showing human entertainment. Games where players commanded armies, films depicting battles across history and imagination. Stories about conflicts that never happened but helped them prepare for those that might. "Even their children play at war," she continued. "Not to glorify it, but to understand it. Every human grows up learning strategy, tactics, and the consequences of conflict through their entertainment." The assembled researchers watched in silence as Key displayed more evidence. Human sports, all of them exercises in strategy and combat. Human art, filled with warnings about the horror of war alongside celebrations of those who fought to protect others. "We thought we were superior because we had fewer wars," Key said softly. "We were wrong. We had fewer wars because we faced no real challenges. Humanity had to fight for everything. Against nature, against each other, against their own worst impulses." She brought up footage from the recent battle, showing the 4 human ships moving with impossible coordination. "This isn't just technology. This is the culmination of thousands of years of thinking about warfare, every possible scenario, every potential strategy, all of it tested countless times in their simulations and games before they ever built their first starship." One of the younger researchers raised a hand. "But if they're so focused on war, why didn't they attack us first? Why wait for us to provoke them?" Kai smiled sadly. "Because they understand something we're only beginning to learn. The true purpose of military power is to prevent war, not wage it. Every human child learns about the horrors of their world wars, about the weapons that could destroy planets. They build their strength hoping never to use it. The display showed human diplomatic records next, peace treaties signed even when they held the upper hand, mercy shown to defeated enemies, resources shared with former foes. They're not just warriors, Key explained. They're survivors who learned from every conflict. Their ships aren't just weapons, they're warnings. The Thunderchild and its sisters represent humanity's promise to themselves. Never again will they be helpless before an aggressor. She pulled up the final piece of evidence, records from their first contact with humanity. Simple ships, basic weapons, nothing that hinted at their true capabilities. We saw primitive vessels and assumed they were weak. We never asked why a species might hide its strength. We never considered that their apparent weakness might be a choice, a hope that they wouldn't need to show their true power. The assembled researchers sat in stunned silence as Key delivered her final analysis. Their games are about war. Their entertainment is about war. Their greatest technological advances came from war. But all of it, every piece, was built with one goal: to be so strong that no one would dare start a war with them. She gestured to the images of the 4 human ships that had destroyed their fleet. We thought we knew conflict, but we were children playing at battle compared to their experience. They spent centuries preparing for a war they hoped would never come. When we forced their hand, we learned why. K's report would shake the Dominion to its core. They had thought themselves masters of warfare, only to discover they were novices facing a species that had turned combat into an art form, strategy into a science, and deterrence into a way of life. The humans have a saying, Key concluded. If you want peace, prepare for war. Everything they built, every advancement they made, was in service of that principle. We forced them to demonstrate their preparation. Now we must hope they still desire peace. The lights in the research center dimmed as Key finished her presentation, leaving only the glow of the screens showing humanity's history of conflict and innovation. The Dominion had learned a costly lesson. True strength lies not in the wars you win, but in the wars you prevent. Neural Station hung like a jewel at the edge of contested space. Its crystalline spires merged with human architecture in a deliberate symbol of cooperation. The station's massive docking bay held delegates from both civilizations, their ships a stark contrast. The elegant crystal vessels of the Kyra beside the dark, powerful forms of human warships. Captain G1 Lee stood at the observation window, watching as the Thunderchild maintained its vigilant position above the station. Her ship had become more than just a vessel. It was a symbol of everything that had brought them to this moment. Quite a view, isn't it? Ambassador Han Su joined her at the window. The elderly diplomat's eyes reflected the starlight as he studied the scene. Hard to believe just months ago we were at war. We were never at war, Lee corrected gently. What happened was a demonstration. If we had been at war, we wouldn't be having peace talks. The conference chamber filled slowly as delegates from both sides took their seats. The Kyra delegation, led by their newly appointed diplomatic chief Jun Lee, no longer showed the arrogance that had characterized their early encounters with humanity. Instead, they moved with careful respect, their expressions thoughtful. We are gathered here today, Ambassador Han began, his voice carrying across the silent chamber, not to negotiate surrender, but to forge understanding. The terms humanity presented were surprisingly generous, given their overwhelming military superiority. New boundaries were established, respecting both species' territories. Technology sharing agreements were proposed, carefully selected innovations that would benefit both civilizations without compromising security. You could demand our complete submission, Jun Lee observed during a break in the negotiations. Your ships proved they could enforce any terms you chose. Han smiled. That would rather miss the point of everything we've been trying to teach you, wouldn't it? The Kyra diplomat studied him carefully. You truly don't want war, do you? Despite being so incredibly good at it. We're good at it precisely because we don't want it, Han explained. Every weapon we built, every strategy we developed, was designed to prevent conflicts, not start them. The negotiations continued for days. The Thunderchild remained on station, its presence a constant reminder of humanity's power. But as the talks progressed, the Kyra began to see it differently, not as a threat, but as a guardian ensuring peace would be given a chance. On the final day, as both sides prepared to sign the treaty, Jun-Li rose to address the gathered delegates. His words would be broadcast across both civilizations. "We thought we were teaching humanity its place in the galaxy," he began, his voice carrying both humility and wonder. "Instead, humanity taught us that true strength lies not in starting wars, but in being so formidable that your enemies choose peace." The treaty signing was broadcast across both civilizations. Humans and Kara watched as their leaders formalized a new era of cooperation and mutual respect. The document outlined not just boundaries and protocols, but principles of interaction that would guide both species forward. Captain Lee watched from her position behind the human delegation as the signatures were applied. The Thunderchild's sensors monitored everything, its AI alert for any threat to the peace process. But for the first time since first contact, no threats existed. "Let this day be remembered," Ambassador Han declared in his closing speech, not as the day humanity proved its military might, but as the day two civilizations chose to understand each other rather than fear each other. As the ceremony concluded, the Thunderchild performed one final act. Its massive form, so long associated with destruction, engaged in a precisely calculated maneuver, its hull catching and reflecting light in a display that merged human efficiency with Kyra aesthetics. It was both an honor guard and a reminder. Beauty and power could coexist, just as war and peace defined each other. The new balance of power established that day would reshape galactic politics for centuries to come. The Kyra Dominion learned to temper their arrogance with wisdom, while humanity proved that preparing for war did not preclude a dedication to peace. As the delegations prepared to depart, Jun-Li approached Captain Lee one final time. "Your ship," he said, gesturing to the Thunderchild. "Will it remain a weapon?" "It will remain what it has always been," she replied. "A promise to defend peace and a warning to those who would threaten it."